South China Morning Post, 28 February 2024, EU fails to enact legislation mandating Chinese suppliers' environmental and human rights audits. China paid EU lawmakers to obstruct a vote on upholding human rights. On Wednesday, the European Union could not agree on a contentious bill that would make large corporations responsible for environmental and human rights violations throughout their supply chains. According to the regulations, EU companies with more than 500 employees and a global net turnover of €150 million, $162.7 million, would have been obliged to conduct thorough audits of all of their partners and suppliers, including those in China. They would also be expanded to cover non-EU businesses with a net turnover of more than €150 million in Europe 3 years after they initially went into effect. The 27 bloc countries convened in Brussels on Wednesday to vote on the regulations, but the qualified majority needed to approve them was not reached. Significant member states like Sweden voted against the regulations, putting them below the necessary level of 14 member states, with populations representing at least 65% of the Union's residents. Diplomatic sources reported that Germany, Italy, and 10 other nations abstained. According to a French official, Paris proposed expanding the directive's company threshold to include companies with more than 5,000 workers. This proposal may need to be reviewed when the negotiators reconvene. The government of Belgium, which now holds the rotating EU presidency, stated that the necessary support wasn't found. We must now assess the current situation and, in consultation with the European Parliament, determine whether the concerns raised by member states can be addressed. The lead negotiator for the European Parliament on the matter, Laura Walters, expressed her outrage at the vote. "I am offended by the political games played on due diligence in the European Council today. This is blatant disrespect for the Parliament of Europe. Time is running out for member states to get their act together," the Dutch senator wrote on X. According to an EU ambassador, members abstained due to administrative burden and fear of an uneven playing field on the global stage, among other concerns. Political parties supporting businesses were worried about the administrative load the regulations may impose throughout Europe. Additionally, businesses have complained that the legislation would have given them an unfair competitive edge over companies exempt from compliance. After member nations, notably Germany and Italy, declared they would abstain, an earlier vote that was supposed to take place on February 9 was postponed. It is the most recent in a string of planned environmental regulations from the EU that have not gained the approval of its capital cities ahead of the elections to the European Parliament in June. Businesses operating in China would have found it particularly challenging to comply with the due diligence law, as obtaining comprehensive supplier information can be challenging. European businesses are already rushing to determine how to comply with Beijing's strict regulations on the export of data collected domestically and its anti-espionage laws. Businesses that disregarded the proposed EU regulations risked facing heavy fines or legal action from impacted parties. Additionally, they would have been compelled to end their connections with suppliers if the negative impacts could not be mitigated. The rule has drawn criticism from Chinese firms due to its potential to result in excessive administrative burdens and disproportionate liabilities on companies. In a written submission to the EU in 2022, the China Chamber of Commerce stated that the most problematic aspect of the proposal lies in the fact that it requires subject companies to exercise due diligence along their entire value chains, both directly and indirectly, at a level which goes beyond their control and capabilities. According to media sources, Germany withdrew its support for banning plastic packaging in exchange for Italy abstaining from the due diligence law. After Germany's dramatic last-minute abstention earlier in February, legislators, lobbyists, and influential business people launched a furious push to promote the legislation. Australian mining group Fortescue's chairman, Andrew Forrest, told the Financial Times that adopting the Human Rights Corporate Responsibility Directive would be doing nothing about it, whining about it, and making sure that all your supply chains lead straight back to China. Other company executives, though, weren't as encouraging. In a recent interview, Christian Bruch, the CEO of Siemens Energy, stated that the €150 million threshold for non-EU operators will benefit Chinese rivals. He claimed that whereas European businesses have to inspect their sub-suppliers thoroughly, Chinese rivals who come to the market with a full product might not be subject to the exact requirements. In the meantime, next week, the European Council and Parliament will negotiate a deal on a forced labor ban, Another regulation that does not explicitly mention China but will disproportionately affect Chinese enterprises because of worries about similar tactics in the Xinjiang area. This also seems like a complicated deal. There are disagreements about who should enforce a ban, with EU members maintaining that the European Commission should be in charge. However, Commission sources lament their lack of personnel. Senior Green Party MP Heidi Hautala stated that the Council now had 2 weeks to devise a substitute plan, failing which it will be postponed until after the elections. The entire legislative project would be in danger if the directive were pushed to the following term. She stated that to end the impasse, there must be political will and strong leadership at the top. Furthermore, the Free Democrats, a minority coalition party in Germany, had succeeded in its sabotage and pulled along several member states with it, according to Hautala.